And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So, in this week's episode, we'll be talking about Intel's production for the 3 nano chip processor that's going to be in production sometime in next year. So, that's a big improvement. Next, we'll be talking about EU's requiring for a standardized charger, which is, I think, it's a high time coming for our smartphone since there have been different types of cables that we've been using. Some are good, some are not so good. So we'll take a closer look at that one. Next, we'll also be talking about a game of sorts. But what's interesting about this one, it's made by Filipinos. So the name is called Love Esquire. So we'll take a closer look at that as well. And here's an interesting Disney Plus subscribers has reached a milestone, reaching the north of 116 million subscribers, paid subscribers at that. So is that going to topple or catch up to the giant that is Netflix? We'll see in a bit. And then next we have Virgin's Galactic stocks tumbles. One would think that with the recent launch of Virgin Galactic's space rocket going to space and sending Mr. Branson to space, one would think it would go upwards, but that's not the case here. And finally, we'll be talking about a local businessman, a billionaire at that, whose business is going to have an IPO in the north of $119 million. So we have a lot to talk about, so let's get started anyway. So to start, as mentioned, so the tech business has been hampered with limited or supply chain constraints around the world. I mean, businesses has been trying to recover from last year, even up to this year, but still, many of the industries like the gaming industry, the processor, chip maker, Intel, AMD, you have GPU makers, NVIDIA having problem procuring or securing enough processors to supply the needs from the masses. And then you have the car industry. Obviously, many vehicles nowadays are ever reliant with technology. That's why I'm somewhat apprehensive of, with the convenience of technology, but with the limitation, if there is a logistical problem, in this case a shortage in the production, then it holds the production level of any manufacturing firms. Anyway, in this case, according to an article here at techspot.com, it states that Intel has reportedly secured the majority of TSMC's 3 nanometer production capacity. Now, for those who are not familiar, TSMC is one of the major or the major supplier of chips in the world, supplying companies like, as mentioned, Intel, you have AMD, Apple, and other big companies here that relies on their technology here. Anyway, now it's stated in terms of the rumor they have able to secure a majority of TSMC's 3 nanometer process node, which is a big deal, but that's going to be for production for next year, not this year. So it's expected to start in the second quarter by next year, as mentioned, with mass production to begin in the middle of 2022. So that's going to be some time before you can see in the market, for everyone to use. Production capacity is expected to reach around 4,000 wafers by May next year, and eventually reaching 10,000 wafers per month. So that's going to be a lot. And obviously, with the progression of technology, people are still trying to look for viable processors or even GPUs. So there's going to be high demand. Now, obviously, there's coupled with the mining. Rise of mining, data mining here. So there's a lot of competition for those technologies here. What's interesting here is obviously for Intel, which is a big manufacturer of processor, which they've been in somewhat in turmoil recently because of how AMD has caught up to their level, and they have caught up in terms of providing a significant alternative as to, is it just Intel that you should consider in terms of buying a processor here? Now, obviously, AMD has caught up, but doesn't mean it has surpassed in some levels. Yeah, in terms of money for value per se, but obviously there are still some things that Intel does well in terms of compatibility with their motherboard with some apps. That's why I'm still using an Intel processor here. But nonetheless, AMD has made its no made its presence known, and Intel should be concerned. Maybe maybe not. Anyway, so in terms of the products that it's going to be released next year or for production next year, they have three for CPUs and one for GPU. So in terms of next gen Xeon, which is designed for servers and data centers market here, obviously that's going to need significant power capacity or capability. Then you also have Intel, that is has already its own fabrication, and it's allowing other companies such as Qualcomm and even Amazon to use its current and planned manufacturing capacity. Now, obviously, getting in front of the line in the production process has a key advantage if you're trying to sell a lot of your products in the market here. So companies like what do you call this? Companies like AMD and Nvidia are trying to catch up. Even Apple, right? If you buy in volume, tens of thousands or millions of thousands of volume per batch, and obviously the company like TSMC would put you in front of the list. And if you can do that, then you'll be able to produce your products first, sell it to the market, and generate a substantial revenue here. And obviously, getting that advantage for Intel is a big opportunity and a source of revenue. Hamstring, limiting the ability of AMD as well as Apple's plan for their own production of a 3 nanometer chip here. And obviously, there's have been a debate in terms of making your chips even smaller so you can pack in as much technology as possible. But maybe there's a limitation up to a certain point unless we can find an evolution of technology how to get more or even more with less space or capacity here. Anyway, what's interesting here, AMD has been struggling already to secure enough 7 nanometer chips from TSMC for its graphics and Ryzen CPUs. Now, one thing to note, AMD is the main supplier for the GPU for the gaming consoles, whether it's PS5 or even the Xbox Series X here. So obviously, ensuring you have enough inventory when you start production, whatever line of products you're selling to the market is readily available here. Question here is there any other alternative outside of TSMC in terms of the volume capability and the quality control there? Now, obviously, at the end of the day, regardless of the situation that's happening with the different manufacturers, the winner here at the end of the day is the TSMC, because they're the only major supplier that many companies are solely dependent upon. So if you're looking to invest on a company, well, look no further here in terms of TSMC here. Anyway, next we have here in terms of billionaire Mr. Richard Branson. So for those who are not familiar, Mr. Branson owns Virgin Company, and you have Virgin, the airline company. You have also Virgin Galactic, wherein he's trying to compete with the likes of Mr. Jeff Bezos, Blue Origin, as well as Elon Musk, SpaceX, to conquer space, or to, I wouldn't say colonize space, but to be able to travel to space, offer something else for the masses. But anyway, according to the article here at Forbes.com, billionaire Branson sold 300 million worth in Virgin Galactic stock recently as shares tumbled. Now, one would think that how can a company, or in this case Mr. Branson, earn a substantial amount despite the shares of the company is declining? So let's take a closer look here. Anyway, so as mentioned here, so what happened there is it sold about 10 million shares for about $300, which able to able to generate the 300 million as mentioned earlier. Now, question is, how was it able to do that despite the shares of Virgin Galactic fell by as much as a little over 3% to just $25 from as high as $35 a week ago. So there's a $10 difference here. So I don't know. My concern here is maybe there's a not so much of a big interest from the public to go into space because obviously you can only go travel to so many countries around the world so many times, and with the pandemic that's still ravaging, so other means maybe going outer space, but obviously the logistics of going to outer space or even orbit around the Earth's atmosphere is going to be a daunting task, and it's going to be expensive based on the initial release of many of the companies that did their test pilot, which was successful nonetheless. What's interesting here is Virgin Galactic, the companies, has seen its shares of ups and downs here in terms of the stock nearly tripling as retail investors plowed into heavily shorting stocks in the first quarter alone, and then all of a sudden it tumbled nearly as much as 70%. So investing in this company is so volatile because in terms of the viability of the business platform, whether people would be I guess there would be people interested, but would there be enough people to be interested to support that business model here? I'm apprehensive, but one can be not too sure about this. Anyway, so what's interesting is the share soon skyrocketed again early this summer when there was anticipation where Mr. Branson was mentioned the first step to go to outer space here. But at the end of the day, no matter what type of hype, whether it's Mr. Elon Musk or Mr. Branson here, will there be a demand for space travel in the future? Now, unless the Earth is in dire need or it's going to explode in any time somewhere in the future, then I don't think people are people are curious, but I wouldn't say that excited. Just like how when airplanes were invented or commercial airplanes where people get to travel from one place to another here. But we'll see if things could turn around. But one thing is interesting here. They were able to take advantage of the market volatility in terms of cashing in by selling its shares before it tumbled significantly downward and being able to gain a substantial revenue here. And as mentioned, shares started crashing the following day that Virgin Galactic announced its intention to sell 500 million shares in stocks to investors here. So obviously, they're trying to raise capital to continue the research and hopefully be able to accomplish its objective by making it a viable business by traveling to outer space. I'd rather travel around the world than rather travel to space because there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But who knows? Anyway, next we have here, we were talking about in terms of technology. Obviously, we use a lot of devices for our daily uses. You have cell phones, tablets, laptops, for casual to heavy uses for streaming, watching, or even just sending emails left and right. But the problem here is obviously with different manufacturers, different iOS, meaning Apple, they use different types of cables. It used to be you could use micro USB, then now you have the Type C. But in terms of iOS, they're using the what they call it, proprietary lightning cable. But the cable is totally different. But what's interesting here is it took the EU first to be able to I'd say mention this, but propose and hopefully make it into a legislation in the near future. Meaning, Apple, for all its technology benefits that it's produced over the course of the years and decades, they try to make it so hard for the Apple ecosystem to not be able to share the benefits of having a Type C cable. But in terms of laptop, they incorporated, but in the smartphones, they intentionally made it so that it's difficult for them to just use a traditional or a common standardized cable here, which is a Type C. Anyway, here in the article appleinsider.com, it mentions that the EU is to propose a common charger for all smart. I think this is tremendous, and we should have been done a long time ago. And this is, this is a big black mark for the Apple company, because they've been, selling this cable for so long. Unless there's a big advantage for using the data cable, but kind of confusing in your laptop, you're using Type C cable, so you cannot flip flop from one technology to other. So if you're going to bet on the data cable, is it a better technology versus Type C, then you stick with it. But since if you can't, why not just change it to a Type C to make it easier, since a lot of people now are using, whether it's headphones, my Bluetooth headphones, I use the Type C. Smartphones using Type C. Even my Switch is using Type C. My laptop is using Type C, and even my audio Focusrite audio deck is using Type C cable. So a lot of device, even the keyboard that I'm using right now is using Type C. So makes it convenient and even reliable. So that obviously with the Type C, even the Type C cable, it's very nearly impossible for you to make a mistake, because there's no right way of plugging it. As long as you can plug it straight to the port, then you'll be fine, right? Not like with the micro or regular USB. There you have to ensure that it has to be right side up, so that it's a minor problem, but nonetheless a minor inconvenience. And obviously the benefits of using a Type C connector is much bigger than what it used to be here, and which is, I think, I'm all for it here. And according to the EU, there's been a long-running plan to harmonize chargers for smartphones. And I think it's not just for smartphones, but I think it should be for all devices as well. Like in my case, so if I have a smartphone, a headphone, a laptop that I'm using simultaneously, if I were to have just one cable, wouldn't that be tremendous? Makes it more convenient rather than buy several cables to which is being used, for whatever reason that's proprietary, which is, so that you have to buy the company's proprietary product, which is kind of frustrating if you think about it. But nonetheless, now it's at Apple's doorstep. Obviously, Apple is behemoth against this transition because it will cut into their profit. But is it any better for the consumer? That's the whole point. If their data cable is any better or significantly better than the Type C cable, then they should market that. But if that's not the case, then the consumer should win out at the end of the day, in my opinion. Anyway, according to the EU, they continue to maintain that a common standard would reduce electronic waste, which goes back to another factor. With the case of what Apple is doing right now, so it used to be, headphones and chargers are included, right? They remove the headphones, and now they've removed the charger, saying that it's for environmental purposes. But if you're a new Apple user, you're buying, the latest phone or iPhone, you cannot even use your old data cable anymore, since it's proprietary. Then the later versions, you have to use a Type C cable. And if you don't have a charger, you still have to buy a new one. So it's kind of confusing what Apple is trying to send here. They want you to buy a new product, but they want you to buy also the other accessories which used to be included. That's why I like what Brazil did. They required or forced Apple to include those chargers given in their box, which was you supposed to be given, right? It's part of the pricing strategy. That it's not as if they excluded the charger, made it more affordable. Not really, made it more expensive actually, so that they can generate more profit, more revenue, and more higher margins than what they're earning right now. Anyway, so at the end of the day, the key here is it's not just the EU should be pushing this standardized charger, but also in the United States and the rest of the world, so that companies like Apple cannot simply take advantage of, keep on charging every penny for every accessories that you need to buy for your devices here. Now, obviously, there are still limits as to what a Type C cable can do in terms of, I think, it still cannot power a XPS 15 laptop, You have to buy a powerful brick to be able to accommodate it. But still, it's using Type C cable now. So if you can just have one charger to rule them all, so to speak, then it would be more convenient, right? Whichever company could produce it, then maybe Apple should consider producing a better Type C cable and so forth. Not just make the proprietary cable so that it makes it difficult for the intercompatibility of the cables here. Anyway, companies like Apple, uh, I'm sorry. So the common charger has been around for more than a decade already. Even Apple was included, has signed a voluntary memorandum of understanding, agreeing to work on harmonizing chargers. Yeah, it's just a voluntary memorandum, but do they have to follow? Not really. And based on their action, obviously they don't want that to affect their bottom line. So it just goes to show you what the agendas of each companies are at the end of the day, based on their action, not based on what they have signed or have said in the public's place here. And obviously this has failed, and the EU believes that if companies won't work the move themselves, then the government should intervene. That's like what's happening in the United States with the antitrust issues with the four tech companies: Amazon, Google, Apple. What's the other company? Facebook, Google. I forgot which four. What are the four? Amazon, Google, Google, Apple, and Facebook. Those four tech companies. Should they be allowed to gain even more power as they grow over the years? Obviously, as a business, they're doing tremendous, right? But on the other hand, as a consumer, this is not beneficial for any one of us here. So until the government steps in, regulates what they're doing, that oops, you're overstepping your lines. This is not beneficial for the consumer anymore. Then something has to change here. Now, obviously, there has been advocates for this one, but it's an upfield battle. So stay tuned for how it develops in the future here. Shifting to gaming here now. You may not be familiar with this game, but the developers is what got me interested here. Now, according to IGN.com, a Filipino dating sim RPG type of game. It's called Love Esquire. I haven't played it, so I'll try to check it out later. Makes the jump to Nintendo Switch. Now, obviously, this hasn't been a new game, so to speak, but it's been in the market for a few years now. So obviously being a Filipino made or Filipino development team that made this game, what got me interested here. Now, obviously, uh, dating type of game is not as common, but include that with a RPG type of genre makes an interesting or compelling case if you're a game aficionado here. So obviously, the unique dating sims came out in the Southeast Asia, where we are. It's called Love Esquire, made by Yang Yang Mobile. So the game is based on a romantic comedy visual novel and dating sim game with the addition of turn-based RPG combat here. Now, if you can see here, where was it? The design is very appealing. I mean, it's not that bad. So you can see here. Let's see some gameplay here. So it's not only that. What's interesting here, it was released way back in 2019, and it's now been ported to the Nintendo Switch, which is Nintendo, you're on notice since the Valve is releasing the Steam Deck later this year. Hopefully, we can see a finished product here in our country by early next year. Anyway, the game won Best Audio Award at the Sea Game Awards last year. So it's a very interesting concept here, but in terms of the visuals, it's not that bad, right? So if you like playing this game, you could always check it out, see if it's appealing. It looks, it's not bad, right? Now, obviously, it's a typical turn-based RPG style, so don't expect it to be the latest gen console experience here. But in terms of visual appeal here, I mean, it will get some attention in terms of the gaming community here. Anyway, so best of luck to the company to be able to grow its game as well as produce other types of games, maybe other types of genre. Actually, nowadays the more popular games online are typical shooter type games, which I'm not. I like to play it, but not a big fan of it of sorts. But I may be the minority rather than the majority here. Anyway, uh, so check it out. Love Esquire. Check out in your Steam as well as in Nintendo Switch here. Anyway, so next we have here. So big news from the Disney company here. So the Disney, which owns a lot of businesses in terms of making movies and then now in the streaming platform, Disney Plus, which has earned record-breaking paid subscribers here. So according to the article techtimes.com, the Disney company has topped the quarter 3 report with the record-breaking what do you call this? Record-breaking 116 million paid subscribers. Now, obviously, it's still nowhere near where what do you call this? Where Netflix is, but it's making a big charge towards its market. So the main competitor for Netflix is Disney Plus here now. Whether Disney can catch up to Netflix, we'll see. But for the company here, they're betting on releasing films, TV series in their platform has paid dividends, regardless of if you like the TV series or the films per se. So it has generated a lot of buzz and interest in their platform, so that people are subscribing and continue to. It's not just you subscribe to them initially, but continue to subscribe in the foreseeable future here. Anyway, so this will provide a significant challenge for Netflix. So anyway, so 116 million is still a lot, right? Compared to the a little over 200 million subscribers. So what made the Disney Plus platform so successful in the present? So obviously the TV series that I only watched the first season, so I don't know what happened to that. The Mandalorian was one of the best hits that Disney could ever produce. Then you have WandaVision, The Falcon and Winter Soldier, and even Loki. So, but still, they're all under the banner of the MCU franchise. Now, whether that's going to translate into more success in the films, then you have the issue what happened with the Black Widow and the lawsuit that Miss Johansson levied against the Disney company because of releasing the film simultaneously, but they agreed upon to release it first in the movie theaters before releasing it in the streaming service, so that it gets the revenue it expects originally. But that did not happen. So anyway, but what's interesting here, so with those a little over 100 million subscribers, they are able to achieve 17 billion in earnings. Now, obviously, this is combined with their other businesses from their Disney theme parks, which has returned to operations, which I'm still kind of iffy because there's the Delta variant still roaming around. Even though you're vaccinated, you can still get sick. So I don't know how you manage that. So it's up to the government to decide. But for businesses, they have to resume operation. Otherwise, they'll bleed for money. And regardless if you're Disney, Universal, or any companies that's dependent upon, from their consumers standpoint, then they have to open business here. Anyway, so which leads us to the last point here. Is it a big enough concern that Netflix should be worried that Disney is making inroads in their platform here? Now, obviously, they're still way far off in terms of reaching or catching up to Netflix, and obviously Netflix is not just lying around and letting the competition catch up to them. They're also continuing to invest on TV series as well as films, so that loyal subscribers, which I'm one of them, continue to watch over actually I tend to watch older TV series rather than newer ones. just kind of odd, but that's my taste. Anyway, so the question here is, will Disney be able to catch up to Netflix in the near future? I think, it's an uphill, but there'll be a distant second, because after Disney, you have Paramount, Fox, Peacock, is still lagging behind. So, for Disney, they're making the right bet in terms of investing in the streaming platform, but at what expense? Because at the end of the day, it's their feature films that's going to generate the big bucks for their business there. And if people are just watching it at home, then it's not the same experience as watching in the movie theaters. Even I won't watch whatever the next film they're going to show, whether it's Doctor Strange the sequel, Black Panther the sequel, or even the next one they're going to release, the Shang-Chi film, or even the Eternals, right? But it's as if they're very popular comic book stories that was told, years past. Anyway, but one thing is clear here: for Disney to be able to continue to grow their platform and their streaming services, they need to continue to develop new shows, not just rely on their library of shows in the past, because obviously the shows in the past is always important, since they have the franchise for the MCU and the Star Wars franchise, but you can only watch it so many times. So you need new, fresh influx of content to get your audience hooked and stay hooked. Just like way back in the cable days, right? So each channel has their own unique offering, so that people would, during on Mondays, one would watch Monday Night Football. On Tuesday's lineup, they maybe watch Fox TV show, or on Friday or whatever. So you have to offer something unique for people to stay glued and continue to watch in your platform. Otherwise, like in my case, I don't like subscribing to a lot of platforms, because we're going back to the Stone Age, just like in the cable days, right? So in order to be able to watch certain content, you have to subscribe to those TV networks, which is kind of stupid if you think about it. What Netflix offered in the first place was somewhat ingenious and unique, that you filter all of the content, and it's up to the viewers to watch to their heart's content. And obviously the viewers are happy, they have a lot of content to watch. The streaming services, Netflix, benefit because you're paying a subscription, and then those who own the rights of those films or TV series, whatever the content is, Netflix has to pay a licensing fee, so everyone wins. But obviously, some companies are becoming greedier, so they earn more. That's why they want to create their own content. Now, whether that content is good enough, only time can tell here. Anyway, for our last story, so going back to local story here. So we have a billionaire, a supermarket chain owned by our Philippine-owned billionaire Mr. Villar, which is considered one of the richest or the richest person in the Philippines right now, is raising in the sum of $119, 100 million, $119, 100 million, $119 million from its IPO to boost its operations. Anyway, so according to Forbes.com, as mentioned, the supermarket chain we're talking about here is All Day Marts. Now, some of you may be wondering, in the city it's not as popular, but in the provinces, in other areas, it is popular. Now, in the city, more often you're familiar with Mini Mart and even 7-Eleven. Even in my neighborhood, in the corner here, we have a 7-Eleven here. But anyway, majority owner Mr. Villar is planning to raise 6 billion pesos, or a little over $100 million worth of amount for its IPO. So to boost its what do you call this? To boost its capital, so it can grow and generate more grow as a business, right? So they plan to sell as much as 7.5 billion shares. That's a lot. And so that it can generate the almost 700 million shares, as mentioned earlier, at a very affordable price, at only 0.80 centavos per share. So it's less than 1 peso. So if you're interested in investing in the company, it's a good time to invest. But question is, uh, how is All Day performing in terms of the current market? So let's take a closer look. Now, obviously, it mentioned that the proceeds from this IPO is to repay some of its debts, which is, yeah, it's reasonable, but should is it being managed properly is the question here, and will it be able to raise the necessary capital that it's initially planned here. Anyway, so some interesting facts about the company. It was established way back almost 5 years ago in 2016, which currently only has 33 stores. So obviously significantly smaller than what 7-Eleven, even mini marts across the Philippines here. Now, what's interesting is they're offering an online grocery delivery service. I think this is their unique proposition compared to other supermarket chain here. So, question here is, if it's comparing with its grocery chain, you have SM, Save More, and then you have what's the other, Robinson Supermarket, SNR, and the many lots. Now, obviously, offering the delivery service is very important nowadays. So, all the while, I thought that the All Day Mart is a, what do you call this? Oh, sorry. The All Day Mart. Yeah, the All Day Mart is considered, so actually it offers same day delivery service, which is kind of interesting. So just looking at their website, it offers a very intuitive interface here, so makes it easier for users to purchase products online. So generating the necessary capital to be able to grow the business is always important here. Anyway, it was mentioned here that the profits or the net profits of the company has doubled since last year to almost 220 million pesos and has climbed almost 70%. So they, obviously with the pandemic that's going on, online sales has been jumping or skyrocketing ever since from last year. Anyway, the goal of the company now is to grow its stores from 33 to a little over 100 stores by 2026. So will it be competing with the likes of SM Supermarket? But obviously it's still nowhere to its to the level of SM here, but we'll wait and see here. Anyway, so what's interesting is the Philippines is among the most active markets in terms of IPO launches in the Southeast Asia this year alone. There were 3 companies that have raised a little over $1.5 billion. You have Monde Nissan, which we discussed a few weeks back, and then offering 1 billion back in June. So obviously companies are trying to get back to some normalcy here, and some have adjusted well, some have not. So obviously how companies fare will depend on their decision making in the immediate and in the foreseeable future here. Now, one thing to note that All Day also has a sister company is called All Home. Okay, a home improvement chain which was made public in 2019 and has net worth of a little over 7 billion here. So, which is both owned by the Villars. You have former Senator Mr. Vanny Villar and his current wife Cynthia Villar, who's a in politics, who is in politics or is currently a senator either for our country here. Anyway, good luck to their company. I'm sure they don't need luck because they own a lot of businesses and properties for the Villars here. They were known for the real estate in somewhere in Muntinlupa, and then they have grown their businesses tremendously to the point where they've reached where they are today. Anyway, that concludes another episode of our Business Focus Live. So for more business news, stay here with Business Focus Live. If you have any inquiries as to the topic that was discussed today, you can check out the link below for the full article here. Also, you can also help support the channel by leaving a comments down below or hitting the like button here. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Same time, same channel for more business news here. Okay, and that's it. Stay safe and take care.